All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is chapter 11, section 2, the Roman Empire and Religion. This is the second video, and I'm going to pick up where the first video cut out. So I do know that it stopped recording me before I intended it to, so the second video will probably be a little bit longer. But I'm going to start, and I'm going to repeat the last paragraph from the last video. So we're actually starting in the middle of the clashes with Jews section, and we're going to finish this conflict. So what had just happened is that the Jewish people kept revolting because they wanted to be independent. They didn't like being ruled by outsiders, so they kept revolting. They kept having conflicts and battles, and they kept losing. And so eventually Emperor Hadrian thought it would be a really good idea to be very, very harsh with them, have really, really hard laws with really, really heavy penalties, tax them a lot of money because he thought this would make them want to stop being independent and give up Judaism. However, it didn't. And so this is where we're going to start off. It says, instead, Hadrian's actions made the Jews even more upset. Once again, they rebelled. This time, Hadrian decided to end the rebellion once and for all. The Roman army crushed the Jewish revolt and destroyed Jerusalem in 135 AD. Soon after, they forced the remaining Jews to leave the city. Then the Romans built a new city on the ruins of Jerusalem and brought settlers from other parts of the empire to live there. The Jews were forbidden to enter this new city for more than once a year. Driven out of their ancient city, many Jews moved into other parts of the Roman world. Reading check, drawing conclusions. Why did the Romans consider Judaism a threat? They considered them a threat or a political problem because they kept revolting. So they wanted to be independent, and they kept having armed like little battles and fights, and so that was a problem. I just like to point out like how mean the Romans were to the Jewish people. So imagine you live in the city of Oak Creek, and you don't, and all of a sudden outsiders, will say from like Illinois, come in and they take over the city, and they're like, oh, we're in charge now and you have to do everything our way. And you're like, but we don't want to. We want to be ruled by other people from Wisconsin, and we want to be ruled by our own people in Oak Creek. So you keep fighting back, and then eventually they just destroy the entire city. Like they level it. Like there isn't a single building standing in Oak Creek. And they kick everybody out. They kick you out of your house and they make you move. And then they rebuild the city and build all these brand new shiny houses and all these brand new buildings, and then invite all these other people from all throughout the United States to live there and say, you citizens of Oak Creek, you can come in one day, once a year, otherwise get out, neener, 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 you don't get to live here. Like, how terrible is that? And so then you're like, well, I can't live in my city that my generations and generations and generations of people have lived here, and you have to go find somewhere else to live. Like, that's how mean the Romans were in this case. So that finishes the section about the clashes with the Jews. It also finishes answering question number 1. We're going to start with a new religion and question number 2. So both parts of question number 2 are going to be answered in this section where it says a new religion. At the beginning of the 1st century AD, what would become a new religion appeared in Judea. Called Christianity, this religion was based on the life and teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. Christianity was rooted in the ideas and the traditions of Judaism, but it developed as a separate faith. At the time that Jesus was born, around the end of the 1st century BC, there were several groups of Jews in Judea. The largest of these groups was stricter than the others in its religious practices. Its members were particularly careful about obeying the laws of Moses, whom you read about in chapter 7. Jews believed that Moses gave them a set of laws to follow. In keeping with their observances of the laws, the Jews led strict lives. For example, they performed daily rituals and avoided eating certain foods. Many Jews followed the laws closely because Jewish prophets had said that a new leader would appear among them. Many thought this leader was more likely to appear if they were strict in their religious behavior. According to the prophecy, the Jews' new leader would be a descendant of King David. When he came, he would restore the greatness of King David's ancient kingdom, Israel. The prophets called this leader the Messiah, which means God's anointed one in Hebrew. In other words, the Jews believed that God would choose the Messiah that would lead them. When the Romans took over Judea in 63 BC, Many Jews believed that the Messiah would soon appear. Jewish prophets wandered through Judea, announcing that the Messiah was coming. Many Jews anxiously awaited his arrival. Reading check. Summarizing. Why were the Jews waiting for the Messiah to arrive? Well, they were waiting for the Messiah to arrive for hundreds of years because they were told that when they did, that they would, the Messiah or God's anointed one would return Judea or would return Israel to greatness. So the idea being that when the Messiah came, he would restore the greatness of King David's ancient kingdom of Israel. So Israel would be powerful again once the Messiah came. Jesus of Nazareth. This is going to help answer question 3A. Jesus of Nazareth, the man many people believe was the Jewish Messiah, lived at the very beginning of the first century AD. Although Jesus was one of the most influential figures in all of world history, we know relatively little about his life. Most of what we know is contained in the Bible, the holy book of the religion of Christianity. The Christian Bible is made up of two parts. The first part, the Old Testament, is largely the same as the Hebrew Bible. It tells the history and ideas of the Hebrew and Jewish people. The second part, the New Testament, is sacred to Christians. The New Testament contains accounts of the life and teachings of Jesus and the early history of Christianity. The New Testament accounts, Archimedes is very interested in this. So let me go back. The New Testament is sacred to Christians. The New Testament contains accounts of the life and teachings of Jesus and the early history of Christianity. The New Testament contains letters written by some of the followers of Jesus. The birth of Jesus. According to the New Testament, Jesus was born in a town called Bethlehem. In our dating system, the birth of Jesus makes the shift from BC to AD. Jesus' mother, Mary, was married to a carpenter named Joseph. Christians believe God, not Joseph, was Jesus' father. As a young man, Jesus lived in the town of Nazareth and probably studied with Joseph to become a carpenter. Like most young Jewish men of the time, he also studied the laws and teachings of Judaism. By the time he was about 30, Jesus had begun to travel and teach about religion. Stories of his teachings and actions made up the beginning of the Bible's New Testament. According to the Bible, Jesus created excitement wherever he went. Now we have a little extra link about Christian holidays that you can read. Crucifixion and Resurrection. As a teacher, Jesus attracted many followers. As he traveled the Judean countryside, he greatly influenced many who listened to his message. At the same time, his teachings challenged the authority of the political and religious leaders. According to the Bible, Roman leaders arrested Jesus while he was in Jerusalem on or about 30 AD. Shortly after his arrest, Jesus was executed. He was killed by crucifixion, a type of execution in which a person is nailed to a cross. In fact, the word crucifixion comes from the Latin word for cross. After Jesus died, his followers buried him. According to the Christian belief, Jesus rose from the dead on the third day after he was crucified. Christians refer to Jesus' rise from the dead as the resurrection. After the resurrection, several groups of Jesus' disciples or followers claimed to see him. Early Christians believed that the resurrection was a sign that Jesus was the Messiah and the Son of God. Some people began to call him Jesus Christ, from the Greek word of Messiah, Christos. It is from this word that the words Christian and Christianity later developed. The teachings of Jesus. So the growth. Okay, sorry. I want to make sure we weren't missing a question, but we have still only answered question 3A, and we're going to keep going. So we have the teaching of Jesus. Jesus traveled from village to village, spreading the message to the Jewish people. Much of Jesus' messages was rooted in older Jewish tradition. For example, he emphasized two rules that were taught in the Torah: love God and love other people. Jesus expected his followers to love all people, not just family and friends. He encouraged his followers to be generous to the poor and to the sick. He told people that they should even love their enemies. The way people treated others, Jesus said, showed how much they loved God. Another important theme in Jesus' teaching was salvation, or the rescue of people from sin. Jesus taught the people who were saved from sin would enter the kingdom of God when they died. Many of Jesus' teachings dealt with how people could reach the kingdom. Jesus warned that people who loved money or God more than they loved God would not be saved. Over many centuries since Jesus lived, people have interpreted his teachings in different ways. As a result, many different denominations or types of Christians have developed. A denomination is a group of people who hold the same religious beliefs. Still, despite the differences, Christians around the world share some basic beliefs about Jesus and his importance. So we have a very famous painting here that you can look at. And then we have another primary source, Paul's letters to the Romans. So then again, a primary source that you can take a look at. All right, the spread of Jesus's teaching. We're going to answer question 3b in this section here. The apostles were 12 disciples whom Jesus chose to receive special training. After the resurrection, the apostles traveled widely telling about Jesus and his teachings. Some of Jesus' disciples wrote accounts of his life and teachings. These accounts are called the Gospels. 4 Gospels are found in the New Testament of the Bible. They were written by men known as Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Historians and religious scholars depend on the Gospel for information about Jesus' life. Probably the most important figure in the spread of Christianity after Jesus' death was named Paul of Nazareth. Paul traveled throughout the Roman world spreading Christian teachings. In his letters, he wrote about the resurrection and about salvation. Paul also told Christians that they did not have to obey all Jewish laws and rituals, but these ideas helped the Christian church break away from Judaism. Reading check, summarizing. What do Christians believe happened after Jesus died? So if we go back up to the section here, what they believed is that after he died, after his crucifixion, is that there was a resurrection, so that he came back to life, and that people saw him, and then people continued to share information about him. So the book answer is after 3 days he rose from the dead, and this was a sign that Jesus was the Messiah. All right. I believe we are now at the growth of Christianity. These 2 paragraphs here, especially this one, we're going to answer question 4a. The growth of Christianity. The first Christians spread Jesus' teachings only among Jews, but Paul and other Christians introduced Christianity to non-Jews as well. As a result, Christianity began to spread rapidly. Within 100 years of Jesus' death, thousands of Christians lived in the Roman Empire. However, Christians tried to spread their beliefs faced challenges from local officials. Some officials even arrested and killed Christians who refused to worship Roman gods. A few Roman emperors feared that Christians would cause unrest, so they banned or forbid Christianity. This began a period of persecution against Christians. Persecution is the punishment of a group because of its beliefs. Christians began to meet in secret and continued to spread their faith in the early 300s. The Emperor Constantine became a Christian. He removed bans on the religion, and later emperors made Christianity Rome's official religion. Identifying cause and effect. How did Paul's ideas help spread Christianity? So the idea is that Paul spread Jesus' teachings throughout the Roman Empire to further develop the religion, spreading it from Judaism. So he not only would tell people who believe in the Judaism about Jesus Christ, but he would also tell people who didn't, and he just would tell anyone, and that helped spread throughout the world. So if we take a look at the map here, you can see how Christianity has spread. So you can see where it had started is in the very dark reds, and then it continued to spread out, and then the line is where the Roman Empire existed. So summary and preview. Although usually tolerant, Roman authorities persecuted Jews and Christians in the empire. However, both Judaism and Christianity survived. In fact, Christianity eventually became the empire's official religion. Next, you will read about the fall of Rome. So when you are done reading, the next thing you want to do is take a look and open up the document for the section 2 assessment questions. Remember, if it says recall or identify, you're going to go directly back into the text to find the answer. If you are explaining or describing, you are adding a little bit more information about what the book says. If you are analyzing or summarizing, you're elaborating, you are adding more information. So you're taking what the book has and you're putting the pieces together. Okay? If you have any questions, please give me somehow get in contact with me, and we have one section left, and then we will be finished with the Rome unit.